Welcome back to the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls around the world. Good evening, boys and girls. Are you ready for bed? Are you all snuggled up, tucked up, wrapped up, nice and warm and ready for another Lights Out bedtime story? Good, because you're in for a treat tonight. We have chapter 17 of a book called Fing by David Williams. And this chapter is called Wiggled, Waggled, and Woggled. When the light illuminated whatever it was moving around in the shadows, it let out a low growl. Like most people, Mr. Meek thought of himself as someone who was good with animals, even though he'd once been bitten on the bottom by a horse, a pantomime horse. Thinking that he could tame this creature, he tiptoed forward and crouched down, striking another match. Strike, whiz! He had the first good look at it. Bingo! Or rather bongo. This thing was indeed a Fing. It was exactly the monsterpedia had described. The creature was no bigger than a tennis ball. It was round and furry and moved about rolling. Two little holes were visible, one at either side of a large eye, which swiveled around to look at Mr. Meek. One hole must have been its mouth, and the other its bottom. However, despite these two holes performing wildly different functions, they were completely indistinguishable from each other. Inexplicably, Mr. Meek began speaking to it in a baby voice, as if an animal were most likely to understand you if you spoke to it, as if you still wore nappies. Hello, little thing, or should I say Fing? Do you want to come home with me? Cooed Mr. Meek. Grrr, came the reply. Despite this not sounding anything like a yes, he reached out his hand to stroke the animal. This proved to be a mistake, a big mistake, enormous, gigantic, humongous. Let's just agree, it was big. Grrr, snap! Ouch! Screamed Father. The thing had bitten onto his index finger, and it wasn't letting go. The pain was eye-watering. Meow! Mr. Meek's face had turned scarlet, and his hair was standing up on end. Mingy mongy moo! And the man wiggled and woggled his finger as hard as he could. Get off me! The creature just sank his teeth in deeper. Its eye narrowed. It was as if it was going in for the kill. Next, Mr. Meek hobbled across the cave and tried to whack the creature off him on the stone entrance. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Still, the creature sank its teeth deeper and deeper into the man's fingers. Oh, water! He exclaimed. I bet it hates water. As fast as he could, Mr. Meek staggered towards the lake, without thinking what might be in there. This was the deepest, darkest, jungliest jungle, remember? He leapt in, splosh. To his surprise, Mr. Meek could stand up. Up to his armpits in water, he began giving the thing an ultimatum. Right, that's it. That's really it. I need my finger back. It's one of my favorites. I need it for all kinds of things. Turning pages of a book, scratching my bottom, picking my nose. I'm sorry, Fing, but you give me no choice. And with that, the man took charge. Finally, he found the hero he'd always thought might just be lurking beneath his meek exterior. At last, he was the most manliest man in the whole of Mandom. Yes. He lifted his finger high into the air to savor the moment before plunging it deep under the water. Splish! Mr. Mink held it under, sure that the thing would release its grip. Smiling to himself, he waited and waited and waited and waited some more. Then the strangest thing happened. Bubbles began floating to the surface. Blub, 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 blub. The bubbles were huge, brown, and foul-smelling, eye-watering, nose-tickling, stomach-turning, stinky. In a word, pongy, wongy, woo-wah. It was a very different stench from the creamy custardy droppings. Mr. Mink held his breath and peered down into the dark water. His feet weren't touching the lake bed after all. They were touching something big and grey and alive. Blub, 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 blub. Still more lethal-smelling bubbles burst into the surface. It was only then that Mr. Mink realized that he was, in fact, standing on an animal. Not just any animal. Oh no, a honkopotamus. Oof. That's the end of chapter 17 of Fing by David Williams, and that chapter is called Wiggled, Waggled, and Woggled. Oh my word. Here on the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls and honkopotamuses around the world. Good night.